Now take leaders' questions under Standing Order 36. We welcome Minister Darragh O'Brien and we call on Deputy Pearse Doherty, please.
Maigad Echan Corlia, agus leis an rialta seo a price ní tithe Mithe, Tríd and Jean. Agus the Úniarach tíana is níos deacra agus níos deacra agus níos fóide ar hiúil do glúnta dar an líní. Léithir tuairiscail an Leonúan Commission on Survey Carche go bhfuil airdu do bhreis agus €9,000 taca ar costas títheachta nua a mórcheant ar bhála clia a bhain ó hanig an rialta seo a náfig 3 bliana hain. Minister, today's report by the Society of Chartered Surveyors on the cost of new housing delivery lays bare the depths of the housing crisis. The cost of new build homes has gone through the roof. In the Greater Dublin area, which includes counties Dublin, Kildare, Meath and Wicklow, the average cost of a new build home is now more than €461,000. That's an increase of €90,000 since you and your government took office 3 years ago. Minister, average earnings in Dublin alone are less than €37,000. And what this means is that the vast majority of workers and families in the Greater Dublin area have no chance, no hope of being able to afford to purchase a new build home under this government. And that fact extends beyond Dublin. The average cost of a new home in Cork now stands at €433,000. And on it goes throughout the state. And this reflects the abject failure of your government's housing plan because you haven't turned a corner. As the prices of new builds go through the roof, housing is becoming less affordable year by year, with workers and families locked out. And that is why home ownership is falling under your government. This comes just a week after we learned that new rents have soared by 12% in the past year, with tenants now forking out an average of €4,000 more per year to their landlord since when you took office 3 years ago. And if we turn to the government's record on delivery, on affordable purchase homes, the results are equally as damning. 0 affordable homes delivered in 2020, 0 affordable homes delivered in 2021, only 323 homes delivered in 2022, and only 101 affordable homes delivered in the first half of this year. And are they even affordable, Minister? In areas of South Dublin, the price of these affordable purchase homes range between €408,000 to €435,000. So judging by this record, it seems that everybody knows that we're in the grip of a housing crisis except this government. And is it any wonder that the Banking and Payment Federation's latest mortgage report found that the average first-time buyer's age now has risen to 35, the oldest since records began? And Minister, is it any wonder that home ownership is falling under your government? Is it any wonder that generations of our people are losing hope and looking to build a life and future abroad? So today's findings by the Society of Chartered Surveyors lays bare the failure of this government's housing policies. Prices continue to rise, homes are less affordable, rents continue to soar, home ownership is becoming more difficult, more distant and more expensive for an entire generation. And Minister, what is your response to this government's report today? What responsibility do you take for this staggering rise in house costs? And what are you going to do to change direction and deliver affordable homes for workers and families? Because this is happening on your watch. You are the Minister for Housing that is overseeing the largest increases in rents since records began. House prices have gone up now €90,000 since you have taken office, and it now takes in the Greater Dublin area a family to have a joint income of €127,000 to be able to purchase a home. That is why home ownership is dropping under your government. That is why your plan is failing. That is why people are giving up hope in you and your government.
Ceann Comhairle Nish an éire dús caiim é rá go bhfuil ar plan ag obair. Tá sé go obair inis, níl gach duine ghnó é fós. Tágam ar 3,000,000 tí nua an uirí. Agus táim iad ábalta táim cinnte níos mó mar sin a dhéanamh an bliain seo. An uirí tágam ar níos mó tí sosialta ná mar a bhí le 50 bliana. And a rís táim cinnte go bé míad ábalta níos mó ná sin a dhéanamh imlína. Tí ar pláis réisiúnta le ceannach den céadúir le 5 bliana déag. Den céadúir riomh tí a ligean ar cíos ar pláis réisiúnta freisin tríd an cost rental scheme. Níos mó ná Fiche Cúig Míle Ceannathóirí Ceadúra Mortgageáistí an Uri freisin. And Tom Kincha freisin, go déanamh níos mó mar sin im lína seo. Tá sé sin an Iarna. Tá arflan tíag de cog ag obair fós. A níl flan ag sin féin, níl ein flan curbe. Níl ein flan cosúil le tíag de cog freisin. Agus tá Tom Kincha gwen an dul chun cin atá ann cursaí tííochta ag siúl tríd an bliain seo agus an bhliain seo cogan. In relation to the SCSI report, what Deputy Doherty has neglected also to say is that the SCSI are very clear about their supports for government schemes like the First Home Scheme, like the Help to Buy grant, like the development levy waiver to boost home ownership and reduce costs. All three, I'd remind you, Deputy, you're opposed to. Your party are opposed to all of them. So if a first-time buyer is watching in here today and who wants to buy a home, they need to know that Sinn Féin does not want to give them back the €30,000 in tax that they've earned to help towards their deposit. They also need to know that the thousands of households who've been approved under the First Home Scheme, many of which are renters stuck in a rental trap, they also need to know that you and your housing spokesperson and your whole party here are opposed to that, a scheme that's actually working. So what you do regularly, Deputy, is come in here and rail against government. That's fine, that's your want. But as the main opposition party, you have a responsibility to actually put down alternatives. Now, we were waiting for your housing plan that Deputy O'Brien said he'd bring forward in July. Never brought it forward. And then instead, what he did a month after the budget, he produces and your party produced your alternative budget. And in your alternative budget, 2.5 pages committed towards housing and what you would do on housing. Sinn Féin, 2.5 pages, nothing else. Inexplicably, also, Deputy Doherty, and you may want to clarify this with your colleague next door to you, is that another area in which we're actually getting families into homes is by tackling vacancy and dereliction. On Jontas Faluntas Creekona, over 5,000 applications, nearly 3,000 approvals. And your party, even though your deputies come in and ask me to alter the scheme, you oppose it. You made no provision whatsoever in your alternative budget for any funding whatsoever for that grant. So if you want to also maybe inform the House here today what your position is on that. And I did note with interest earlier on this week on Tuesday night, and maybe it was after the day that you had, is that you've also now stopped talking about bringing back a moratorium on evictions. You've dropped that. You've dropped that. And you've dropped that because you know the measures that we brought forward are working, like the tenant in situ scheme. So, you know, this is serious politics. Government is about implementing policy and making a difference for people.
Time is up. Deputy.
I'm not even going to respond to all the misleading points that the Minister said, because it is complete deflection. But what I will respond to is the fact that you are stating that your plan is working. And I would genuinely ask you, or any of the ones that were laughing and heckling there, do you think it's working when we've seen the record level of rent increases ever since records began? 12%? Do you think it's working that when house prices in the Greater Dublin area have increased by 90,000 since you folk took office 3 years ago? Do you think it's working for the renter who's struggling, who is now paying €4,000 more to the landlord every single year than when you took office? Or do you think it's working for the nearly 4,000 children who woke up in emergency accommodation today? Because I know where my party stands, I know where we stand. Your plan is failing and failing dramatically, and every bit of evidence shows it. So I've asked you, Minister, what are you going to do about the report that is published today? The report states very clearly that house prices in the Greater Dublin area have increased by €90,000 since you became Minister for Housing in the last 3 years. It is told us very clear that to purchase a home you need a joint income of €127,000 when the average income in Dublin is €37,000. What are you going to do? Because you have no plan, you have no ideas, you're out of ideas and you're out of time. That's the reality.
Minister.
What we need to do and what we're doing is increase supply across all tenures. Across all tenures. And Deputy Donnelly knows that very well because he's been out turning sods with me in his own constituency, the largest social and affordable housing schemes in the country in Mulhullart. in Donabate, Portrane, in my own area, one of 1,200 homes that your own party objected to, by the way. But we're increasing supply, and we will do over 30,000 homes this year, between 40 and 50% of them actually supported by the state. We have a very strong pipeline into next year, and we are turning the corner on housing delivery. And yes, Deputy, there remains challenges, and there certainly does, and the single biggest priority is those who don't have a home to enable them to get a home. But on every measure we've brought forward, all you've done is oppose them. Land Development Agency delivering homes this year, hundreds of homes and thousands next year, you're against it. All the grants available to first-time buyers, you're against them, all of them. And inexplicably, your party continues to object to housing all over the country. Ask Deputy O'Snuddy behind you as to why he objected to 200 social and affordable homes in his own constituency.
Now we move to the Leader of the Labour Party, Deputy Ivana Bacik. Please do not accuse a member of the House, Deputy O'Snuddy, of lying. Do not.
Somebody stands up here and says an untruth to this House. It is a lie in anybody else's terminology. In this House, we have to call it an untruth. It is an untruth that I objected to the House you are talking about. It is an untruth. It is a lie.
Thank you, Deputy. Resume your seat now. Please, Minister. Please, do not exacerbate the problem, please. Please, no. Would you please have a bit of manners, everyone, please. The Leader of the Labour Party, please.
Minister, €127,000, as we know, is the combined salary that a couple must now earn to buy a 3-bed semi-detached house in Dublin, according to the Society of Chartered Surveyors today. You're pricing far too many people out of a home, and Minister, you could do so much more to address this, such as passing our Labour Bill to implement the Kenny Report, or launching a proactive construction recruitment programme to bring in more construction workers. But we do know that some of these price increases faced by people when they're trying to buy a home, they're driven by delays and flaws in the planning system, and I want to focus on planning. Because planning law in Ireland should be fit for purpose. But our planning system is broken, mired in controversy, highly centralised, desperately slow, unfit to meet the needs of our growing population. And Minister, you've acknowledged this because you've promised us radical reforms. But your planning and development bill falls well short of the mark. You dropped the use it or lose it clause, there are concerns about constitutionality of some aspects of the bill, and it won't address some key failures in our planning system. And I want to hear more from you on real reforms, on our proposal to crack down on bribery in the planning system of the sort which was exposed by RTE Investigates on Monday night. The Taoiseach told me on Tuesday that he was not convinced that a new standalone offence was required on this, and we in Labour disagree. It's vital that we crack down on planning corruption. Those who exploit the planning system for personal gain are not only making a quick buck off developers, they're also profiting at the expense of all those who want to move into a home of their own but are locked out due to costs and due to delays, because the actions of those who abuse the planning system increase the ultimate price for everyone. They increase the ultimate price of homes for us all, and it's incumbent on the state to crack down on such practices. But it seems that's not happening. Minister, last night I was alerted to a concerning recent and ongoing case. I was shown evidence about a party who seeks to use the planning process to coerce a developer to pay more than €500,000 into an escrow account in exchange for the withdrawal of an appeal to An Bord Pleanála. The party also insisted on the use of a confidentiality clause to cover this up. Minister, this feels like a return to the bad old days. And in the correspondence I received, I saw evidence this was brought to the attention of An Bord Pleanála months ago, but that no further action arose on it at the time. Minister, as legislators, we have to act to address abuses within the planning system. We have to ensure that our planning system is not open to this sort of abuse, because where it impacts in particular on residential developments, it is people who lose out, and it's very serious. So, Minister, my question to you is, are you aware of cases of abuse like this within the planning system, and what action do you propose to take to address them? Do you now see the need to adopt our Labour amendment to the Planning and Development Bill to make this sort of behaviour a standalone offence? And how else would you propose to put an end to this sort of grubby deal and to ensure that our planning system is fit for purpose to deliver the homes and the public infrastructure that we so badly need?
Sure.
Thank you very much, Deputy Bassett, for your question. It is very, very important. Firstly, as you will know, is that we've commenced at second stage the Planning and Development Bill, and as I've said, This is the most significant reform of our planning legislation probably ever. It's a 700-page bill. It seeks to provide clarity, certainty and consistency in our planning legislation and our planning system. And that is crucially important. I do want to say to you, Deputy, that any amendments tabled will be looked at very seriously. And we haven't got to committee stage yet. I was hoping that we would have advanced second stage further this week, but unfortunately, due to the Dáil business on Tuesday brought forward by the main opposition party, that had to be paused. I agree with you completely that this matter is urgent, but we have to consider this legislation very carefully. And I certainly will work with colleagues in the opposition, constructive colleagues like yourself in the opposition, I'll certainly work with constructive colleagues in the opposition, as I've always done. Just the Attorney-General's advice, and this is for the information of the House, and I have written to the Attorney and the Department of Justice in advance of the RT Investigates programme, which I find shocking. Not, I have to say, surprising, because I have heard of cases. And I would ask you that specific case that you mentioned, that there was correspondence to the board, to bring it to our attention. I would say to the person that under Section 17 of the Criminal Justice Public Order Act and under Section 6 and 7 of the Criminal Justice Theft and Fraud Offences Act, that such practices should be, could be and can be looked at under those acts. But if a party like your own brings forward alternative suggestions whereby we feel that we can strengthen that in the Planning and Development Act, I will be open to that. And I say that to you now, and I say that in all sincerity. What we've got to ensure is we have a planning system that delivers the infrastructure that we need, delivers the homes, delivers the hospitals, the roads, and the various different things that we need to improve the lives for our citizens. And that's why the legislation needed to be upgraded and why we spent 18 months in preparation for this legislation. We also need to resource our planning system, and that's why we have 50% more people working now in Bord Pleanála than we had when I took over as Minister for Justice, or Minister, that's my next job, Minister for Housing as Minister for Housing. But we're filling those roles now. We've 314 posts approved in the board. We've 15 board members now. We were as low as 5 last year, with all the controversies that that came about within Bord Pleanála, and we had to stabilise it and get it moving. But I can tell you, Deputy, I would happily work with you and colleagues in the opposition to look to strengthen this further if that is so required. But there are 2 pieces of legislation I've referred to, existing law, that prosecutions can be brought on for these type of cases.
We'll work with colleagues in government and across the House to ensure that we have really effective reforms of our planning system. And I think everyone wants to see a fit-for-purpose planning system. But our concern is that the bill you've introduced, which indeed I spoke on last week at second stage, that while it is a mammoth bill, the 3rd largest in the history of the state, as you've said, there seems to be very little by way of the radical reform necessary to overhaul Bord Pleanála procedures. And I think we can't lose this opportunity to ensure real progress is made on this bill. So I do welcome your commitment to work with me on the issue of the need for a standalone offence. I think there are difficulties, may I say, with using the existing criminal justice legislation to tackle this sort of corruption. And I should say, Minister, that it's some years ago, some decades ago now, that the Labour Party exposed planning and corruption, the cash for planning scandals in the planning system. And at the time, unfortunately, your party and many others left those calls unheeded. So we do want to ensure now that we don't miss this opportunity for radical reform, that we can ensure that whatever changes we bring in will address the real abuses of the planning system that are going on, that were exposed on Monday night and that I've now seen additional evidence about.
Minister.
What I'd say to you is I do believe that this bill is a major step forward, and that's why it's important that we work together to get this passed as expeditiously as possible. There were some who accused us of rushing this piece of legislation. We have not. We've engaged with stakeholders through the planning forum right the way through. We had very detailed pre-legislative scrutiny of this bill. But committee stage will be very important. I'm not saying that this bill can't be added to, it can. I'm just saying that the advice that I've received from the Attorney is there are 2 pieces of existing legislation and laws there where prosecutions can be brought, where someone is seeking payment in this way, and the way in which we saw on Monday night. That type of behaviour is absolutely reprehensible, is disgraceful. It actually slows the delivery of much-needed homes for people as well. And it's effectively a form of bribery. There's no question about that. And that needs to be called out every time that is done. And I would ask the Deputy, as I know you will, to submit the information that you have through my office.
Thank you, Minister.
And I will work with you at committee stage, where second stage continues today, actually. I hope that we'll be able to conclude second stage of this legislation in advance of Christmas.
Deputy Boyd Barrett, on behalf of People Before Profit.
Minister, the Chartered Surveyor's report this morning demonstrates complete market failure and failure of government policy to deliver affordable housing for the majority of working people in this country. That's what their evidence suggests. With the average cost of delivering a house across the country at €397,000 for a three-bed house, or in Dublin €451,000, requiring a combined household income of €127,000, that means 80% of households in this country cannot afford the cost of housing being delivered by the private market. So 80% of workers priced out of the market. You no doubt are going to say, but we have affordable housing schemes. But the affordable housing ceiling for shared equity in Dublin is €360,000. It is €360,000. But 451,000 is what's being delivered. You'll probably mention cost rental. Cost rental in my area, or near to my area, recently, 2 beds, €1,445 per month, 3 bed, €1,550 per month. Now, in all of these cases, if you have two households earning, you might have a chance. Might, although average earnings are €40,000 in this country. So for the average house price, even two combined incomes will not be able to afford the cost that the market is delivering housing. But in terms of cost rental, it won't deliver for single income households. Because single income households cannot afford €1,400 or €1,500 for a 2 or 3 bedroom rental per month. And the HAP thresholds are the highest. Homeless HAP threshold is €19.50 a month. Average rents in Dublin now €2,100. If you're actually looking for something to rent, it'll be more like €2,500. So at every level, people can't afford to buy, they can't afford the cost rental in many cases, and they can't afford to find a HAP that is within the thresholds. So what do we need to do to be constructive? You need to recognise that the market is not capable of delivering for 70 to 80% of workers. Therefore, the state has to deliver 70 to 80% of what is being built as social and affordable housing. Can this be done? It is done in Vienna. We can do it if we decide to upscale the social and affordable housing targets, establish a state construction company, and in the short term, buy up, instead of the vulture funds, buy up what is being delivered in order to deliver social and affordable housing on scale.
Minister, please.
Thank you, Deputy. I know you're very earnest about this issue. You raise it regularly. Firstly, just for your information, the price ceiling in relation to the First Home Scheme in Dublin's €475,000 for a home, €500,000 for an apartment, and we review them every 6 months. Now, we've had on that scheme about over 7,000 registrations, over 3,000 approvals, many of which in your own county. There still remains major challenges with regard to affordability. And the SCSI, and I thank them for the work that they've done with regard to the report that they've brought forward. And it speaks to the challenges that we have. And that's why we need to continue to advance the Housing for All plan. Because what's really important, Deputy, is that we increase supply across the board. So on social housing, I'm a firm believer that the state needs to lead by example. And we've made a step change in delivery there, that we will deliver more new social homes this year, right across the country in all 31 local authorities. right across the country of very significant social housing delivery this year, more than we did last year. So sizably more affordable housing than we did last year, and significant, a really good footprint. And through the state construction company, the Land Development Agency, that you know well, Deputy, in your own area. Look at one example of Shanganagh Castle. Good cost rental, affordable homes are there, good social homes. And we'll be recapitalising and further capitalising the Land Development Agency to deliver more homes. And that's what we're actually doing. You cannot turn this around in 2 years. But what we've now done is to be able to have a footprint and a pipeline of very significant homes right the way across this country, both at social and affordable level, and then providing the supports for many of those renters, working families, to be able to buy the homes through the First Home Scheme, through the Help to Buy grant as well. 42,500 households have access to Help to Buy grant so far. As I said, over 7,000 registrations on First Home. But across the board, we need to deliver more homes, and we're doing that. I'm even looking at just today that planning permissions granted, the number of figures were just out earlier today, up for the month of October, 45% up on this time last year. 45% up, over 9,000 homes approved. And I have brought in legislation, as you know, Deputy, that I think you did support at the time, was the owner-occupier guarantee, which was to ban the bulk purchase of homes by investor funds. And we did that. And that has taken shape, and thousands of planning permissions have been granted now with an owner-occupier guarantee. That means that the home is for a family or for an individual. We've changed the affordable housing, or the local authority affordable home loan. We've upped the income limits for singles in particular, because it can be very difficult for singles to actually purchase properties. That's why the First Home Scheme doesn't discriminate against them in any way, shape or form. That's why the Croí grant, the Vacancy grant, doesn't as well, and why we've changed the local authority affordable home loan as well and upped the income limits there. So we are making progress. There is more to do in that space as well. And we've cost rental tenancies in place for the first time ever in Ireland. I'll come back in supplementary.
Deputy Boyd Barrett.
Okay, first of all, the Charter of Surveyors are saying the ceilings are inadequate. First of all, okay, the local authority home loan max you can go to is 360,000 on the local authority home loan, well below what the actual price that the market is delivering. So it's not available to huge numbers of people. And then the key point is your targets for the year are 29,000 houses, only 9,000 social and 3,500 affordable, which, by the way, you won't meet. Not even close, right? Not even close. So only 35% of what you're planning to deliver, but you won't deliver, is social and affordable. But 70 to 80% of working families are priced out of the market by the prices that the Charter Surveyors are saying are being delivered. It's not working, right? You've got to dramatically increase, even in the planning bill, you have to dramatically increase the proportion of social and affordable housing that is being delivered. And because nobody can afford what is being delivered, the vulture funds buy it all, rent it at unaffordable prices, or lease it back to the local authorities at extortionate cost.
Deputy.
Deputy, through our local authorities alone, I've approved funding for over 4,500 local authority-led affordable homes, starting from on or about 166,000. And that's working. I've met people who are moving into the homes. The First Home Scheme ceilings will be reviewed at the end of this year. I've given you what the real ceiling is. It's 475,000 in your area, and we review them every 6 months.
How good if the local authority loan is less?
And we do. And the Land Development Agency will deliver hundreds of homes this year. It wasn't delivering any homes when we took over and when we came into government. I know the Land Development Agency, Deputy, you opposed the Land Development Agency, the legislation, when we came to vote on it. So we wouldn't have a Land Development Agency. We would, you know, they've committed 1.25 billion euro in equity, but it is doing that. But sorry, it is doing that.
We'd have had them sooner.
But you see, at any opportunity we come in and we bring in with the LDA, we legislated for it, we capitalise it, and it's delivering homes. We wanted to deliver more, and we're going to further capitalise it to deliver more. And I'm just saying, Deputy, and you are earnest in your remarks, but when the solutions to these are brought forward, like a state construction firm, like an LDA, you voted against it.
Now we move finally to Deputy Dennis Naughton, please, on behalf of the regional group.
Thank you, Concorda. Minister, while there's no doubt that we need more new homes, as you're aware, I've long advocated for the release of vacant homes to assist those in urgent need of housing today. I've argued that we have streets in our towns and villages that have not had a football kicked on them for a generation. Many of them are vacant family homes close to schools and services and have high-speed broadband outside the door. My proposal for the introduction of the Vacant Home Refurbishment Grant, which you steered through government, is now beginning to yield tangible benefits, and I want to thank you for taking this initiative up. Furthermore, I highlighted the unjust triple taxation imposed on older people in long-term nursing home care who choose to rent out their homes. I'm pleased to acknowledge that the government's actions this week to actually dismantle these barriers. This change has the potential to introduce an additional 3,115 rental properties onto the market. There were initial concerns that this policy might inadvertently pressure older people into long-term nursing home care. However, in a response to me from Minister Mary Butler last March, she assured Dáil Éireann that there were no concerns regarding the thoroughness of the existing independent medical assessments for care needs conducted by the HSE prior to nursing home admissions. This crucial point has been overlooked in much of the public debate on this matter. I also wish to commend Minister Heather Humphreys on her prompt action in extending the rent-a-room relief to social welfare recipients who are interested in renting out a spare room in their homes, a suggestion that I made in light of the potential benefits. This initiative is not only about providing essential housing, but it also offers companionship, enhances security and peace of mind, which can be invaluable to older people. Thanks to this scheme, older people can now earn €269.23 weekly or €14,000 annually by renting out a room without affecting their non-state contributory pension or the benefits of a spouse or adult dependent of a contributory pensioner. However, Minister, to fully capitalise on this opportunity and create additional accommodation, we must address the existing medical card barrier that is currently hindering many older people from participating in this scheme. At present, if a pensioner under the age of 70 or any other social welfare recipient receives an additional income, they face the prospect of losing their medical card. This has now become a barrier to releasing vacant rooms to meet our current housing needs, a point which I highlighted last March. Minister, the medical card income limits have not increased since 2005, which is denying people on low incomes access to affordable healthcare, barring them from employment opportunities and blocking the release of vacant rooms. Will you intervene?
Thank you, Minister.
Well, can I firstly thank Deputy Naughton for raising these issues in relation to vacancy and the other measures that we brought forward to enable to release further housing stock and accommodation capacity. Particularly thank you for your engagement on that, because you were very helpful and constructive in relation to the establishment of the vacancy grant, which we've done, and pleased to tell deputies here this evening over 5,300 applications in. Over nearly 2,500 approvals. So it is working very well, and I've received approval to extend that further into next year and to double the targets that we're setting there. Also, the work that has been done in relation to rent-a-room and the income disregard. And this will be particular focus on students as well there, which I think will be very worthwhile and will have benefits for both students but for the householders themselves as well, as you've rightly said. The over 70s income limit for medical cards has been changed back in 2021, and you know that. But further to our engagement back in March, where we'd agreed the counter motion that government will extend a rent-a-room scheme disregard for social welfare recipients and extend the disregard into medical card criteria. And we got government approval for that, and the objective of government is to provide for a disregard of up to 14,000 income for persons who have granted a rent-a-room relief by the Revenue Commissioners, such as the income will not be assessed for medical card assessment purposes. At present, income derived from rent-a-room would be assessed under the medical card assessment, but in such cases this income would obviously be a contributing factor. So officials from the Department of Health have subsequently progressed work to identify and develop the legislative requirements needed to give effect to this objective. So we agree this needs to be done, and the income disregard for rent-a-room relief for people on medical cards needs to come into effect. A Health and Miscellaneous Provisions Bill 2023 has been drafted, and that provides for the exemption of rent-a-room income from medical card assessment. The general scheme of the bill was approved by government and published on October the 6th. following which work was undertaken by officials in the Department of Health and also in the Attorney General's office. Drafting of the bill is actually now at its final stages, and I'm being informed by the Department of Health that that is expected to be completed very shortly. And subject to government approval for the publication of the bill, which I'm sure we will get, it's intended to progress the legislation through the Houses of the Oireachtas in early 2024. But I do thank you for raising this matter. I think it will help, obviously, for people if they're going to lose their medical card because they're renting a room through it. That'll be a big consideration, and they won't do it, frankly. So we've agreed the principle of it. We need to get the legislation completed and into the House.
Thank you, Minister, for your reply. And just to put a face on this discussion, here in November of last year, with the then Taoiseach, I raised the case of Una, who was a 66-year-old pensioner at the time. And despite working all her life, she was in receipt of a non-contributory state pension, and she was refused the medical card because she receives a net income of €1 per week on top of her pension for the renting out of a field. Her next-door neighbour gets an extra €11 per week in the state contributory pension and qualifies for the medical card. Minister, this anomaly arises because these medical card thresholds have not been revised since 2005. The basic rate of social welfare income over that period has gone up by €83.20, and Una and every other Una around the country is being denied access to a medical card for the sake of €1. Minister, this needs to be urgently addressed.
I can assure you, Deputy, it will be, and we'll work with you on it. And the Department of Health, the Minister for Health, is working on this, and we're concluding the drafting of the draft legislation. Just, it's important for the information of the House, as of the 1st of October, there were over 1.6 million medical card holders and over 595,000 GP visit card holders. And this means that more than 42% of the population, and rightly so, has access to free GP care. Eligibility for the cards was extended to all children under the age of 8 from the 11th of August. So a lot of progress has been made in the expansion of the medical card programme and the GP visit card, and I commend the Minister for Health for the work that he has done on that. On this specific issue, Government have agreed the principle and the objective. We're concluding the work in relation to the drafting of the finalised legislation. That will come to Government for approval to publish it, and we want to move this through the Houses early in the new year, because there are many people who would offer a room and accommodation, be able to avail of the rent-a-room scheme, and we want to make sure they do not lose their medical card. So thank you, Deputy, for raising the matter.
Thank you, Minister, and the members who participated. That concludes Leaders' questions for today and for this week, and we move immediately